Welcome to the Heart Wide Open Wellness Podcast. I am so excited today to have Sammy with us. Sammy Worthington has been somebody I've been really fortunate to get to know recently. I'm so excited to have all of you get to know her a little bit. I'm going to read her bio so you understand a tad bit more about her, and then we're going to dive in to learn about not only who she is, but her amazing accomplishments and what's next for her and all the things. So Sammy Worthington is a rising star in the world of professional boxing, has quickly made a name for herself through a combination of talent, hard work, and determination, and always gives glory to God. With an impressive amateur record of 36-14, is that accurate? 36-14, including 5 national championships, a bronze at the Youth World Championships, and a 5th place finish at the Olympic trials for the 2016 Olympics. Samantha has proven to be a formidable force in the ring. And I will ask you if all of that, because I know last time we chatted, you're like, oh wait, I just had another win, and I added to it. So did I cover everything?
Yes, and then professionally, I'm 9-0.
Okay. So, yeah, see, there's something.
Yeah, right. Added.
So amazing. So I want, my program and company is called Heart Wide Open Wellness. And so we start every podcast just asking, what does it mean to you to live with your heart wide open?
To me, I believe it's every day asking God, what are you inviting me into? Just having my heart available for His guidance and His leading me. He is like who I live for, obviously, but like He's my foundation. Like Jesus is my firm foundation. He's, who I have built my life upon. And it's really like everything that you just read. To me, it's just a list of His faithfulness, like how He's blessed me. And it's just kind of like my memorial of like what He's allowed me to walk into in my life, and like kind of a promise of what's to come. And so, yeah, that's what that would mean to me.
Oh, well, that explains why you have like a radiant light around you at all times. But practically, already I'm curious, how do you maintain that? Like, what do you do to be able to just have access to that all the time?
I believe that it's a combination of a lot of different things. Really, it's like practically it would be like daily disciplines. It really is an active like wake up. Okay, God, what are you inviting me into? I have the church that we go to, Vintage Grace. They have a sticker, and it literally says that. It says, "God, what are you inviting me into?" And I have it on my water bottle, and so it's kind of like a daily reminder that I can see if I forget or wake up frazzled or whatever. But it's really being like actively in tune with like where I see Jesus throughout the day, because I think that is something that like in the hustle and bustle of life, like we just get complacent and like kind of in this like routine that's just like kind of going through the motions. And it's definitely easy for me, especially with like my busy schedule. I know we've talked about this before, like just having like so many things lined up in the day to just kind of go into autopilot mode and just like, okay, I'm just like gonna step into these and just like try to shut my brain off when I can. But I've learned that when I do that, I miss out on like little blessings that He might have for me in the day. And so that I love the term heart wide open. Like I believe that is like really what God wants us to live like. Like He wants us to have our hearts open for whatever. And a lot of the times, like there's a verse that says like He will give us our heart's desires. And like I think that goes hand in hand with like living our hearts wide open. Like that's what He wants. He wants to give us our heart's desires when we are in a surrender. That's really what that is. It's like a hand in hand. It's like that really is what surrender means. It's like having your heart wide open and like, okay, Lord, like here's what my desires are. I want them to be in line with You. And gosh, I could just go on and on. I don't know if I answered the question. I'm like going down this rabbit hole, but that's just such a beautiful revelation. Like living with your heart wide open is like just true surrender.
It's so beautiful. So I could just, okay, we're just going to go where this goes, right? We'll get to some more boxing things, but like, I really think that those desires are our responsibility to follow, because I believe that God puts those in our hearts. And so when we have that desire to go do something with all of our heart, that is our responsibility to follow through. And so I think, I often marvel at, why does somebody really just want to create marionette puppets? And why does somebody want to play the saxophone with all their heart? Why does somebody want to, it's like that desire. We need all those people to do all of those things, right? And when you follow that desire, it is an act of surrender, but it's also trusting that desire and being able to be in tune enough to hear it, being in enough tune to just respond to it, to honor it, to trust it, because sometimes it doesn't just work out. There's resistance. Like I have this desire, but it's complicated. It's hard. It's not what everybody else is doing. It's not what I thought I was going to be doing. It can be a lot of those things. So it does. I love what you're saying, and it also isn't necessarily easy to do that.
Yeah. I think honestly, like if your life is easy, you should probably look internally and be like, am I like really in tune with like what my desires truly are, or am I just trying to stay comfortable? Because really there's no growth in that area. Like if you're just living in a constant state of being comfortable, you're not going to grow. You're not going to change. You're really not going to like be who God created you to be. And it's funny because you said, okay, well, like get back to boxing, but this actually it reminded me of part of my story with boxing, because I have obviously like this desire to box, and I have a talent, and part of my like leading up to when I like fully surrendered my life to Christ, February 8th, 2015, I was 19. I had already, like most of those accomplishments that you read off, like that had already been my life. And so I kind of already, well, not kind of, I had made that my identity, and like that's who I was. I was the boxer girl. And boxing was my everything. And so that desire was already there, but I had not surrendered that desire. I had not like allowed him to be leading me in that. It was all for me. It was like, okay, God, like every time I would, look to him in an act of surrender, like acting as I was surrendering, it would always be like, okay, Lord, how are you going to bless me in this? How am I going to get the glory? How am I going to get, this accolade and this recognition and, all the things. And in reality, he created me to do this, use the skill to be a good steward of these talents, but in order so that, he could get the glory. He's the one who deserves everything, all the praise and the honor. And when I fully surrendered that, I had just actually lost a tournament, and I was in this kind of fork in the road, like state of mind of like, well, wait a second, I thought this was what I was supposed to do. And then when I fully surrendered all of that, I was like, Lord, if you don't want me to box, you can break my leg tomorrow and I will hang up the gloves. Like, I don't care, whatever. It was an honest God, whatever you're inviting me into, like I will follow. And a month later is when I got invited onto Team USA, and I got to go, and it was just, anyway, it was a domino effect of everything you just listed off. Like the Olympic trials and like getting to, do all of these things.
The answer was yes, I would like you to do this.
Literally, like, and so when you were talking, it's like, these desires are not in our hearts by accident. Like sometimes it can be like, okay, I'm, chasing this thing that I shouldn't be. There's occasionally those times, but if you have this passion inside, it's not for no reason. Like it's on purpose for a purpose. And it's really about finding out what that purpose is and stepping into like what you were really created to do in that space, and that's when that happened for me, and it was a full surrender and trust. I let those go hand in hand, because you can't have full surrender unless you trust that who you're surrendering to is trustworthy. Right. And so when that happened, it really was, like you said, the Lord being like, yeah, this is what I created you for, but now you're ready. Now you're ready to step into that, because that's really what it is. It's all, we're being prepared for what he has for us, because not all the time are we ready to receive. Right. And we have to be in that mindset to receive.
So when you receive, you have to get also good at managing being uncomfortable, because you're receiving instruction that might not be on your timing, might not be your preference.
Most of the time not.
Right. Isn't necessarily convenient, all the things. So how did you merge that, or what are your thoughts about, I couldn't agree with you more, that if you are comfortable, you probably need to take a look inward, and there's probably some area of growth, some edge you could push, some opportunity to step towards that you may not be doing. So I couldn't agree with that more. Yet, I know for me, once I got comfortable with being uncomfortable and had the tangible lessons that when I push through something that's uncomfortable and I get through it, not only do I like myself more because I have confidence I can do it again, but I start to have a belief in something bigger in me because I realized I didn't carry myself through that on my own. I had help, and so once you start to establish, I can survive that, and not only can I survive it, but I can thrive with challenge. I can grow with challenge. You start not to step back or fear it so much. And then every once in a while, you have to remind yourself that it's okay. You can still go forward because things get scary, right? Life gets scary. I would like to also maybe answer this question, and then let's learn how you did get into boxing, and all that story is so interesting. But what what would you tell people as far as when you're scared, how do you keep going? When you are uncomfortable stepping towards something that you feel is your call, because you are such a move forward, a step towards, a lean in, a conquer overwhelm. You step towards your overwhelm. You step towards that. So how would you advise other people to do the same?
So I think it's really cool to look at other people's stories and see like how they have stepped into those places. And that's why for me, I will never not share my story, but because part of my answer is I can look back at how I have, what you said, you like yourself a little bit more, or like you have stepped into a deeper level of trust in, what God is calling you into. Like you have these past evidences,
data points.
Yeah, you can look back and see. However, you got to start somewhere. So it's like from the beginning, I didn't have that. And, I think that it was part of what helped me was looking at the people around me, like my parents, my mom and my dad. They're two of the best people that I know. But they were always that like person of perseverance and resilience and trust, like it really is, the source is Jesus, following after him. But just in general, the character traits would be, that determination, perseverance, resilience. And just this like mental fortitude to, like you said, take that leap of faith to keep moving forward. And so I could look to them. But it really does boil down to like, do I trust? That's really the question is,
do I trust before you believe it, right? So you have to trust that there's something on the other side.
Exactly. And so then, and really, from what I was hearing from you, I loved how you just described, like, you look back and you say, like, I didn't do that on my own. Like, it wasn't all me. You have to have humility. Like there's that mindset where I can do it on my own. And it's actually freeing to know that.
Freeing.
There's not that pressure.
Yep.
But I think that practically it is looking at the evidences around you and like just being open to that. And having that mindset of humility and trust that, okay, I trust that if I do take this leap of faith, that it won't be for nothing. And really understanding that the plan is not mine. And that's, again, freeing and relieving. But knowing that it's ultimately for my good. I was just actually hearing someone's story about just something that, their family had gone through, and their revelation was that maybe they won't see the promise and, the quote unquote, like reward or, end of the story per se in this lifetime, but they're trusting that it will eventually happen. Like like God's plan is for healing. It is for restoration. And so they were trusting that, they're going to step into this season of being in the wilderness per se, of unknown, uncertainty, and maybe never reap the reward of their faithfulness. But they were okay with that because they knew that God's plan was for their good. And ultimately, the end of the story was the best, And I think that again, it goes back to like how my parents always pointed me to Jesus, but I was able to see that, like, okay, I see you all doing this, and so I'm going to step into that too, because there is a level of joy that is in those spaces, and you can't find it anywhere else other than, life with Jesus. And that's really what it is. It's, you have this joy, and because joy is not happiness, you can be happy,
correct,
but it's a contentment. And so it's like, okay, whatever happens, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And so I think that really is the answer, is I have joy, and that's what allows me to step into these, like, areas when I have fear, because that's inevitable. Like, I mean, it was just our human nature, but like you said, you start to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and so it becomes like something that is just natural for you to just take that step. But those first few are scary.
They're hard.
Yeah, and they're hard. And I think that it's actually, like, cool to be in those spaces, because it's like, okay, I know I'm about to make this next step of growth.
Yep.
But it is uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable.
And so I think it's just knowing, like, everything will be okay.
Yeah.
Even if it's not necessarily feeling okay at the time, but, like, you have joy through it.
I think part of the reason that you have joy through those journeys too. So there's some research that's done that if you just share your experience, right, with even one person, and even if it's to your journal, in your prayers, to your maker, to whatever it is, that if you are sharing those deeper, vulnerable spaces and your experience along the way, that relationship is what brings that contentment, because there's no longer this mystery about everything, because when we're alone, we make up stories. Yeah, when we're alone, we don't have all the answers, and so we just make up stories, and they're usually stories that don't serve us. But when you are doing that in partnership with somebody that you're saying, I trust, you don't do that whole making up stuff that doesn't exist. You just keep focused and you keep going, and there provides a contentment in where you are. So, I mean, we could talk about, that's one thought. Yeah, we could go there. But I also wanted to share, I think you'll like this. So in my Kundalini yoga training, there's one thing that I was taught that I reference in pretty much every class I now teach. And my teacher taught me a saying that says, you keep up to be kept up. And so I would hear her say this, and I was kind of like loosely understood it, and then I got it. And now I really get it. But the theory is, like, we do these poses sometimes that are, they're not necessarily like squats and really like typical yoga. They're more like maybe you have to hold your hands over your head, and maybe you have to do that for 5 minutes, which, you're using muscles that you usually would not use. It's very challenging. It's more mentally challenging though than physically, right? It's like your body can do that, but it's like you feel like your shoulders are going to fall off your body, right? So you're doing it, or you're doing these like longer things like that, where, and you can relate as an athlete, right? There's places where you're pushing yourself and you don't think you can do it. But the point of that is that you stay. Your job is to keep your arms up. And then when you do that with all of your heart, something bigger than you will actually help you keep your hands up, right? And it's like this physical way that you can work with spirit to hold you. And then when you realize, I didn't do that all by myself, and I went through something really challenging, it's like you take that off your mat and you take that into the world. That knowledge that you can do that information starts to be with you, and it infuses how you approach everything in life, right? Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, that's so beautiful. It reminds me of the Footprints poem.
Yeah, it's very much like that.
Oh, yeah,
very much.
That's really like a tangible example of what that story was saying.
Yeah, and I love the somatic. I love bringing it into the tangible, because that's what we're humans. We're on a spiritual journey, but we're a human body,
right?
And so we have to understand it from our human perspective.
We need to know how it translates.
Absolutely,
yeah. Because this is what we're called to right now. Like here. Our earthly bodies, okay, we need to, we can't just be up in the clouds right now. Like, we're here. And so we need to be here in the present.
Sharing your story, doing your thing. Yeah. I mean, running and doing your stuff you've already done this morning and working out. I mean, this is what we're here to do.
No, and I really love that concept, because it reminds me that what I do is a form of worship, because that's when I am stepping into those spaces that you just described, I am allowing him to meet me there.
Yep.
And carry me through, like the footprints film says.
Yeah.
And that's why I do what I do anyways, is, so that he can get the glory, so that I can be closer to him, meet him in like different spaces and have new encounters with him and know him better. And it's a relationship, walking alongside him. But that is I love that. I'm going to think about that now when I'm in it, in the trenches, so to speak, because it will be a sweet reminder of that is why I do what I do. It's hard to remember that, when you're in it, so you're holding your arms up and you're like, gosh, this sucks. Or doing whatever I'm doing, or whatever.
To be kept up.
Exactly. No, I love that. That's so short and simple and very easy to remember.
Yes. I know. I love it for all of those exact same reasons. And I think it's just this conversation we're having right this moment is like, you are very transparent about where you get your strength, and do a very good job at sharing your story. And I hope you always continue to do so. I have no doubt you will. But I think just these little examples show the nuances of why you're able to do what you do isn't in the morning and then you forget all day. It's literally infused into every single thing that you're doing throughout the day at this point in your life. And I think that I'm witnessing you. I think that gives you a joy in life, right? To be able to do it that way.
Yeah.
So how'd you get into boxing?
So this is
people want to know. I know.
This is a funny story. It's so funny when I get this question now. Being married, we just celebrated 4 years.
Congratulations.
So newlyweds. But or at least that's what it feels like. Oh, that never changes. But anyways, I digress. But every time I get this question, he's like, I can answer it because I share it all the time.
Yeah.
And so now he's like, I know exactly what you're gonna say, how you're gonna say it. But my little brother, so I have 2 little brothers. One is 24 and one's 7. So my parents started over. But the one I grew up with, he fell in love with the Rocky movies when he was 6. And my parents were like, Thomas, I don't think there's boxing for kids. And then, long story short, my dad met our first coach at a pastor's luncheon, like of all places. My dad's a pastor, and they were just sharing ways that they do community outreach outside of the church. And one of them was through a boxing gym. And so my dad was like, can I bring my son by? Like, he would love to just check out the gym. He's only 6, but like, it would mean the world to him. And the coach was like, yeah, you can actually start training now. He can't fight till he's 8, but like, let's go ahead and get him started. And my dad was like, whoa. Like, let's hold maybe we'll just let him try it out and see where it goes. Well, the first day he went 18 rounds straight as a 6-year-old. Like, what in the world?
So it's in the genes.
And so apparently neither one of my parents did it. Like, it's not in the family, but like somehow he was a natural at hitting things. And so I did the conventional sports. I was still very much so a tomboy, but my mom called me her prissy little tomboy. I was very much still a girl, loved all the girly things. But I loved sports. I was an athlete, basketball, softball, soccer, like all the things. But boxing was a little far-fetched for me. It was a little too manly is what in my mind and my 10-year-old mind. And so I let him do it. I was very reluctant to try it, but I got convinced a couple years later. So by this point, I'm 12, to try it out as a workout, as a form of conditioning for my other sports. I was like, okay, fine. And so I'm, going through the training, learning all the punches and stuff. I thought it was so dumb because we're hitting the air and it's like so silly. But my competitive side took over. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try to spar. And that's, practice fighting basically. And sparring this guy, there's no other girls I could spar in the gym. We're just using one hand just to see how I react to getting hit. And you never know. So I was like, okay, I don't like this, but I can take it. And then I hit him for the first time and his head snapped back and his eyes got really wide and he was like, oh, shoot. And then ever since that moment, I was hooked. The rest was history. I quit all my other sports. I was like, well, this is what I was meant to do.
To hit people.
Yeah, I know. It's so crazy. I'm like, the two don't match because I'm also a worship leader. And so, those are the two places that I feel most at home here on earth is, in the ring, hitting people, but then also leading people into a closer encounter with Jesus.
Yes.
It's so funny, but yeah, they somehow, the Lord uses it to bring His glory, and like I've been able to connect with my opponents, even after knocking them out, like sharing the gospel. Like it really is kind of a beautiful thing, because you share the space with this person who you have mutual respect with, because it takes a lot of courage to step into the ring and get hit.
I would imagine
hit someone. Like it's just this very unique mindset you have to have. And so there's that mutual respect, but then also like when you lose a fight, it's like, because it's just you, and it's also a combat sport. It's different than even like tennis, another individual sport. I don't know. I've never played that, but like I have been in the team sports in that arena, and been around other individual athletes, and like you're basically, when you lose, it's like people think you get beat up, like, even if you didn't. Like it's just that weird almost shame that is there. And so to be able to then pour life into someone right after that, and even if I've been on the receiving end of a loss, like just having that, we talked about joy, just whatever. Okay, you win and learn, you don't win and lose, and so
I will use that. Pause on that. That is amazing.
It is my mantra. My dad used to say that all the time. It's win and learn, not win and lose. And so even like, I mean, you read my amateur record, 36-14. Like I've lost, and so I've experienced that before, and it every single time is a learning opportunity. And so anyways, that having that that mindset and that ability to share that mindset with the person that you have just shared that very vulnerable space with, it's actually really beautiful to be able to make those connections. And I've met some of my like closest friends in those spaces. Like one of my third professional fight, I beat this girl, and now we're like really close friends. She's from the Bay Area, and so we still spar and help each other out in that way. But like she has become someone that we have shared something that I've not shared with any of my other friends. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Like it's just such a cool
bonding thing that you have.
It really is like a way to bond and connect. And so anyway, it's just cool that like the Lord is able to use something so seemingly brutal and vicious, but then to bring light and beauty through that.
I just think I'm fascinated about the combination of embracing kind of what stereotypically what we more the tomboy or the masculine with the feminine, and like maintaining all of that. I mean, you seem to balance all of that. And what is it like in like female friendships with this? And like what I don't know.
No, this is actually something that is like I'm really passionate about, because growing up, I mean, I just shared part of my story where my mentality was that's too manly, like that's too, but I was also a tomboy. And so having that like almost like the internal struggle was interesting growing up with. I have always been like athletically built, and so I've always had like strong arms, and like I would always cover them because I was so ashamed of them. I was so embarrassed because
you gotta show those off.
Listen, and it's been so cool that my perspective has changed now. Like my arms are why I can do what I do. Like they were gifted to me. Like they are such a gift and a treasure. And my strong legs, like that I'm able to do so many like great things because this is how God created me. And in each person, the way that God designed them was very specific.
Honoring what you have.
Yes, and what you were honoring. Given. I love that. Like I want to honor my body because it was gifted to me. But I didn't always view it that way. And there's a lot of reasons why like society has, and because I've grown up with we need these smaller, like small butts, small legs, small everything. And then now
that's changed.
Seriously, gosh, I have stories growing up about anyway, because there was no small on this bottom half. And so now we've shifted almost to the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm like, okay. And there's been beauty through all of that, but then there's also been a lot of like negative and kind of toxic behaviors and mindsets and rhetoric that's been thrown in that. in the formative years, like, when I started boxing, and that's really, you have a lot of different like pivotal moments in your development. But to me, looking back, it was like that middle school age where like that's when you kind of start to form your identity. And that's when in society it was being preached like small, small, small. Like in the locker room, I just remember all these like, oh, what's your pant size? And I would hear all these girls like 0, 3. Oh my gosh, I'm so big. I wear a 3. And I'm like, a 3?
Right.
Oh no, don't ask me what my number is. And so that was always, I mean, even now I'm like, oh my gosh, I wear a, whatever. And I have to remind myself, Samantha, like your body's so strong. That's why, like, you've got muscle. And so being able to like rewire my brain, it took a long time, but when I started, first, when my identity was truly solidified in, God's little girl, who He created me to be, it did change how I viewed everything, because it was, you mentioned being honoring. I wanted to be honoring to what He had given me, being a good steward. I say that all the time, so I'll probably say that over and over today, but like, I wanted to be a good steward of every body part that He had given me. And in the Bible, it talks about each one has a specific role. And, it's talking about the body of Christ, and He uses the body as an example. But in reality, that is like, my hands, I need them for my sport. Everyone needs your hands for your daily life, your daily activities. With my strong arms, like, I would not be as successful as I am if I didn't have strong arms, strong legs, like, and so being able to view my body in that way, and each person being able to look in the mirror and say, I was actually given this on purpose for a purpose. And each one's purpose looks different. And so for me, my purpose is I need to be strong, and, I need to be solid. And so that looks like having bigger arms. So it was really like game changing for me when I'm going to share this, and I actually ended up wearing a long sleeve dress, but that's just because it was my perfect dress. But for my wedding, what I was looking for was actually a sleeveless dress. And I never thought that I would be looking for that, because I was growing up, like, always wanted to hide my arms, always. And, now I'm like tank tops and, sports bras and stuff. And so I want to show off. And it's actually really beautiful thinking about it now. My uniform is, I just wear a sports bra and trunks. And so, like, I show off everything that number one, it's an example of my hard work and, what I have put into the sport. But then also it really is just like almost putting what God has given me on display. And, there's obviously a line. You don't want to like glorify yourself, but in my mind, I'm glorifying, like, I just love that, honoring of what He has blessed me with. And like I said, I ended up wearing a long sleeve dress. It was the most gorgeous dress ever. But it was the fact that
you were open to that.
Exactly. I was open to, it's actually kind of beautiful now I think about it, because the Lord actually gave me a long sleeve dress, which is what I like always was looking for. But then He just wanted me in that mentality of like, being open and ready for the opposite, you know, and just so beautiful. But
I think there's so many lessons for so many people to learn, and what an example as far as just really trusting our own uniqueness, right? Trusting exactly who we are, and not needing to be different, and actually to step towards those things that because you resist my arms, and then you step towards your arms, and you're like, oh wait, there's all these gifts I didn't see here, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think too, it's beautiful because, and even now still, I feel this, like, growing up, it was almost perceived as like women were weaker. And to me, it's beautiful to be like a strong woman, and to have a voice for other women, and to like pour into them, like, we are strong. And this comes from the Bible, like my perspective on women. And obviously I'm a woman, so I am going to be an advocate for women. But like, when you look at what Jesus has to say about women, like, we a woman was the first person to know he was the Messiah. Like, a woman was the first person to see him resurrected. Like, he put so much emphasis on women in a time when we think we're oppressed now. Like, women were looked at as like second rate back then, and there's still a lot of that in different cultures. But like in biblical times, it was horrible.
Yeah,
and like women had no say. They would rather them just be quiet, and so we're living in a time where we do have a voice and like we do have rights and power, but really looking at it as like who God created women to be, and gosh, did he just totally cherish women, and does. But like, it's just so cool to be held to this responsibility to, we keep talking about sharing my story, but like, there are so many reasons why I do, and and this is one of them, to be able to like raise up, and even if I don't ever have a daughter, like, because I don't really want a daughter, but that's just because I was a horrible teenager, but just to be able to pour into the next generation of women and to raise up strong women in, having the right mentality, because we are created on purpose. I keep saying that. I'm going to keep saying that, but to be a good steward of being a woman and all of the gifts and just treasures that come with that. But to keep that, number one, to have the right mindset and chasing after what God wants, but just to also like know that we were created to be strong.
Yeah, we are strong. We are strong, and I think that you will continue to be an example. I mean, I'm inspired by you every time I talk to you, and it's just a reminder of our strength, of our capabilities, of that we can be all, that we don't have to be everything, but we can be everything that we are designed to be. And and that when I hear you talk, when you say I'm a steward, when you say like there's joy, when you say I trust, there's a spirit and an undertone of gratitude and in that, and I think that is something that I think is like there's an appreciation that you get to come and do things. We've done a few things together now, and there's always just, yes, I'm honored to do that. Yes, I'm honored to do this. Yes, I'm honored to step that way and this way. And with that, there is a trusting of the invitation, right? And I'm certain you're not saying yes to things that don't feel right for you. But at the same time, if it feels like, okay, I mean, you go. And I think you, in those ways, you do continue to live with gratitude, with trust, with faith, with surrender, and with your heart wide open, right?
And I love that that's what I exude. Like, that is really, really cool and an answer to prayer, because that's my heart. I am so grateful. And my worship leader was actually sharing this in the foundation, or two of the pillars of worship is humility and gratitude. And so that is like what I pray that I live my life through is, being humble. And that goes back to, okay, trust and God, what are you inviting me into? But then, being grateful for what he is inviting us into.
And gratitude isn't a one and done. It's a continuation all the time.
Exactly. And I always think a pastor I'm originally from Kentucky. We didn't really talk about that, but back in Kentucky, our pastor, he would always say, we are owners of nothing, managers of everything. And so that I will always, when he would say that, view that through the lens of gratitude, because everything that I have been gifted to manage, I'm grateful for.
It's a gift.
Yes, exactly. And so, and also that is another freeing thing, because we don't own, it's funny. I live in an apartment, so anytime something breaks, I'm like, maintenance. So, I don't have to. And there is beauty in owning. Yeah, for sure. Like owning the vision, owning a house. Like, there is a level of responsibility, and that is something that when we are able to step into that, that'll be so cool to own our own place and whatever. But it's also relieving when things go wrong, or like I need whatever. I can just call up maintenance or call up the office, and so that is here on earth. Like, that is what we get to step into. Like, we're just, okay, Lord, like,
It is
I hope
so
that I'm
freeing.
managing it,
Yeah.
right?
It is so freeing just to let go. And I really, you said that earlier, like just how it's easier in a way just to let go of the reins and just go. I mean, because sometimes I kind of look at it, you show up, you do your devotion, your prayer, whatever it is that serves you, that sets you right to start your day. And then it's kind of like, all right, God, the rest is up to you. So, right? And it's like, you're going to still pay attention and like heed
that's the thing. Yes.
But it's not, it's kind of like just, it's not on me. It's like, oh gosh, that feels good. I'm not in charge. Like, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And because there is that, we are held to a standard and we need to put forth effort. Yep. It's not just like, okay, I'm just going to sit and wait.
Right.
But in those times when we are, putting forth the effort, we're putting in the work, it is just like, oh, he's got it. Yep. Like, I'm just doing what I need to do.
Yep.
And he's got it,
Okay, so I can only imagine what it's actually like to be you. So what does a normal life as a boxer look like?
So on like a typical week, I'll go through this week, just to give you like a generic what I do daily. I typically will wake up. I'm not an early morning person if I don't have to be. So early is relative, I guess, but early for me would be like 7. And so I'll, try to wake up around there, get in either a run or strength and conditioning, depending on what my schedule is for that day. But I always typically will do some sort of run and then do like a strength, plyometric, some sort of like conditioning, metabolic something or other. That's a lot of fitness terms. Basically, I just do a gym workout.
Okay.
And then have some sort of like recovery, if that even just looks like going home to my dog in between, just to get a couple hours of like reprieve and allow my body to have that time instead of like jumping into then another training session. But then I will have a training session where I just focus on boxing. And that looks like a lot of different things. It could be sparring, it could be bag work, but typically it will be some sort of like technical skill that we're working on for that day. And then after that, maybe some sort of like added recovery, or I might swim. So it really just depends on the day. But over the course of the week, I work out 6 times a week. Sometimes I add in a 7th, but that's always active recovery. And then each day I'll have at least 2-a-days, sometimes 3 or 4. But those third and fourth are like a steady state. Because in boxing, it's a lot of like anaerobic. So that's quick bursts, and then you have short recovery, quick burst, short recovery. However, your aerobic capacity has to be like really high because it's over the course of like 30 minutes of like basically nonstop. You're keeping your heart rate above a certain level. So I do a lot of like what they call LISS, like long intense steady state or low intense steady state. And it's called a couple different things. Anyways, I digress. But it's that like steady keeping your heart rate at a certain level and trying to keep it even. So those aren't as high impact. But I'll have at least like 2-ish higher intense workouts every day. So it's very demanding. But when I'm in camp, it's almost, it does ramp up because camp would be like gearing up for a fight. It's about an 8 to 10 week window where you're focusing on, the task at hand. You have an opponent and you can really like game plan and strategize. That's actually, it's good, seemingly more intense, but it's actually a little bit easier because you've got that goal. Like, okay, this is my plan. I'm doing this for 3 weeks. Then we're going to step into this and it's going to be, more running or more conditioning, whatever. Then, the last 2 weeks, it's just focused on weight.
Very strategic.
It's very mapped out.
Yeah.
Whereas like right now, I mean, I do have a fight in December, but we're a little bit far out to step into that just yet.
Yeah.
We're getting close to that moment, which I'm very excited for. But right now it's kind of like, okay, I'm doing it. It sounds weird because I have to, to stay in shape. So then camp is easier.
You're in maintenance, but active maintenance. Maybe a little bit more than maintenance.
Yes. Yeah. Right. A little bit step above maintenance, but Anyway, so that's kind of like what a typical week would look like. A lot of working out.
Lots. Okay, one thing about your diet.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
How
like,
do you-
I
how do
literally was just thinking, I didn't even hit on that. So this is a conversation for another day, because we could really get into this, but I struggle with binge eating disorder, and that's actually something that has been a product of boxing. A whole other, we could get into that. And I'd love to actually on a different day.
I would love to too. We will do that.
But that has been something I've struggled with for, upwards of towards a decade. And that comes with a lot of body image issues and very toxic relationship with food. So nutrition for me, I have to view it as like fuel for me, for my task at hand. That's why these spaces are a little bit more difficult, because I am in that like kind of in between. But in those in between moments, I will I have a set diet plan. I don't even like to call it a diet, but diet is just what you eat. That's what a diet is.
A guide. So you have a guide.
Yes. I do have that and in parameters, because with binge eating, sometimes it can be good to have parameters, but you don't want to have too many.
Too much restriction can backfire for sure.
Exactly. The restriction is where you get into that, the danger zone. But I like to view it as 80-20. So I do have the parameters. Yeah. But if I we went on vacation last week, we were talking about that before we started, and I had ice cream. I'm going to enjoy my food. And not always view it as fuel, because then if I do that, then I get in that restrictive mindset where I'm oh my gosh, I'm not enjoying this. And I love food. So, for me, that is something that I want to be able to enjoy it. So I have a specific calorie intake that I need, and that's because I have to fuel my body for the training sessions that I went over. But then as we get closer to the fight, I start to taper. You have to be in a deficit to lose weight. Weight cutting is a huge part of my sport. But then after the fight, I definitely allow myself to enjoy, to have that freedom. But then there's still parameters in that, there still has to be the right mindset, and mentality towards that. So then you don't, step into, spaces that are going to be harmful, mentally and physically. But nutrition, that's such a huge part of my sport, but then it's also such a sensitive thing for me. It's so interesting. So like I said, that's a conversation for another day.
Thank you for being so vulnerable and just open to just share what you just did. And thank you so much for just sharing that. I'm curious to know, so what we could go, I give a million questions. We could talk for hours and hours. So, I'm sure we'll talk again. We will talk again. But what is next for you? What's kind of next on the agenda? What's on your heart to move towards next?
So I have, long-term goal, and long-term, it's really closer than what I would even imagine, but is to be a world champion. That is 100% what God is calling me into. And so I know he's already written it, and I just need to step into it. So that's really cool, and it really is closer than what in the beginning of my career it seemed so far out, and now we're getting so close to that, reaching that goal. And then from there the way that boxing works is you get one belt, and then there are other belts. There's the 4 main sanctioning bodies. You want to collect all the belts, and somebody joked the other day, is gotta catch them all like Pokemon or something. So anyway, it really is, you're wanting to gain as many titles as possible. If you gain all of them, you're considered what they say is undisputed. And so, I was talking to someone about this actually the other day, and I just know what I'm called into is to be a world champion. And does that mean undisputed? I think so. And so I'm, the Bible says that His word is a lamp unto our feet, a light unto our path. It doesn't illuminate the whole thing. It just illuminates step by step. And so I am just letting Him illuminate it and, shine the light. And I just know that world champion is what I am called to step into. And then we'll see what that looks like. Next step for me, though, direct short term, is a fight in December. So I have one more for this year. And then from there, if I get the opponent that we're hoping that we get, another like top 10 opponent that will really help the trajectory of my career to keep going up and, move the momentum, continue that, then it could be that the longer term goal is a little bit more shorter term. So we'll see. It really depends on, it's very strategic.
Uh-huh.
And
I'm sure
you would think, like, it's just, this first one's fight, it's really, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. But that is really cool to step into trust, because it's like, okay, well, you've got it, but we'll see, what happens in December. That would make me 10-0. And so that would open up a lot of opportunities for 2025. But in my heart, by this time next year, I will either have already gained a title or will have a title fight. So that's kind of what we're shooting towards. And
incredible.
So we'll see.
Oh, I have no doubt that you'll make it, and more, and all of it. So, and we will be watching you along the way. I always kind of, when you have cool things coming up, I put you on my stories, and we have to follow you. I know all the people I'm around love hearing about you. I told my kids that I was going to be working with you this week, and they were looking you up. They were watching the fight this weekend, and stuff, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she's so cool!" So I know that. I love sports, but I know enough about boxing, and I look forward to learning more and more as you and I continue to build our friendship. So thank you so much for taking the time today. It means a lot.
Thank you. Yeah. This is so fun.
Yes, so fun. Thank you for tuning in to the Heart Wide Open Wellness Podcast. For more information, subscribe to our newsletter at heartwideopenwellness.com and follow us on social media at Heart Wide Open Wellness.